and I am retired now, and my city is Durban. I really thought that's where I would stay, do some gardening, sit in the sun, but I'm traveling as much as I could. I'm very happy to be here because it's a very important event. I come from the film festival in Geneva and Spain, and now here, and I go to Cape Town. So I have 10 minutes. I'm going to stick to time because I look forward to your questions. I've been asked to relate a little bit of my life, but focused on how things looked so hopeless, so dead end, and how did we remain positive in apartheid South Africa. How did Nelson Mandela manage to stay 27 years in prison? He could have come out of that prison a year after he'd left, 5 years after he'd got in. I know because I used to go there often. He was offered deals to come out, give up the struggle, and go and stay in the Transkei. And again, he refused. So he is truly an icon, a role model for us all because of how faithful he was to principles. And he appointed me as the first black woman to be a judge in the High Court, and I was there for a few months before I was elected to the Rwanda Tribunal. I never thought we would see change in South Africa during my lifetime. But apartheid was institutionalized as the law, and the majority of people were treated as semi-slaves, and all of us suffered in various ways. But we had the support of the international community who supported the sanctions against South Africa. And today we are celebrating 20 years of our democracy, and I'm part of a parliamentary panel that is looking into whether all the laws that have been passed over 20 years have addressed issues of poverty, unemployment, and inequalities. So I'm very active there still. As a lawyer over 30 years, I represented many human rights activists, but I want to tell you about two cases. One is that my clients also ended up on Robben Island prison, and I was able to see them because they had an appeal going. And I found, we're not supposed to talk about their conditions, but isn't it amazing how we can communicate? And so I found out that they were suffering various ill treatment, and I found out that they wanted me to bring an application, but Mr. Mandela discouraged it. He preferred negotiation because this is an apartheid court. You'd never win any rights in those courts. So really nobody would touch approaching a court for rights for the inmates of Robben Island. I was in my early 30s, 32 or so, and I came out and I spoke to experienced lawyers who all encouraged me, go ahead, bring the application. And we won that application with costs. It spelled out that prisoners are not property, they have rights. They have human rights. We never use the word human rights then. Now I would say that's what we want. The right to a lawyer, the right to a trial if there's an allegation that they broke the prison regulations. And all the newspapers had headlines, the curtain has been lifted on Robben Island prison for the very first time. So that's what I mean, a brick wall, and then you think, what can I do here to spell out the rights? And after that, the things improved on Robben Island prison. We also had a terrible law called the Terrorism Act, and almost everybody was detained under that act, including my husband. He was held for about 5 months, including children as young as 8 years old, or school children who drew drawings or held even the most minor protests. And that act said that no court can order the release of a person or go into why the person has been detained. So no court has access to those detainees. I brought an application on behalf of my husband because we were partners in the law firm and I had his power of attorney. And that's why I was able to bring the application in his name. And I'm telling you this because hundreds of families of detainees came to me after that to say, how come you can do this for your husband and not my son or wife, husband, or whatever? And that application was successful in that I obtained an order that the security police must not use unlawful methods of interrogation. So that's all we got. I was hoping to get him released. We didn't get that. But the order was served on him. The judge said, what's the point in getting this order if it's not served on him? And so there you are. You see the little dents where the court did rule and the sheriff did serve this on him. And he said they just left him alone from that day. And this strong husband of mine just broke down and cried when he saw this order. Now, in the subsequent trial, and of course to support this application, I used affidavits from 10 others who had been detained with him but who were facing trial. So they were outside, well, not outside, but I had access to them in the court case. They all made statements of very brutal torture. And so these affidavits in the Navi Pillay application and the torture exposure we did in the trial reached the United Nations, the anti-apartheid, not the anti-apartheid movement, the ANC had observer status. Soon after, Stephen Biko was killed after brutal torture in South Africa. So South Africa asked for two things from the United Nations. One is sanctions. They didn't get it at that time because Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan vetoed it. But the second thing they asked for is to have a convention against torture. So all these affidavits didn't get my husband out, but ended up in that the world got the Convention Against Torture. And this is what I mean, that sometimes you don't win what you want, but there is some benefit in constantly knocking the door and challenging matters. I don't know how much time I have, so I want to move to the Rwanda Tribunal. I know that my CV has a lot of firsts. I named two firsts for you. It doesn't mean I went to the Rwanda Tribunal thinking, yeah, I'm going to do some first things here. No, I didn't know international law, so I was very nervous. I thought I was the only woman. I thought the other judges knew international law. Found out they knew less than me, and they had no experience of serving as judges in a criminal court. We had lots of discussions about the right thing to do, and in the meantime we were saying do it the way we do it in our own country. But we produced groundbreaking jurisprudence there. The very first conviction of genocide, we had to describe what that crime means. The very first conviction of rape and sexual violence constituting genocide and crimes against humanity. I had to define rape and sexual violence because there was no commonly accepted definition under international law. And I said later that for centuries in wars and conflicts, women were treated as the trophies. Soldiers, I've seen many military manuals that encourage the soldiers, go and fight there, then you can have all those yellow women for yourself. So, you see, women were trophies, and rape had never ever been prosecuted as a crime. So that was the first. I know that many students are studying these cases all over the world. We had many challenges based in Africa. I don't want to describe all of them to you, but I personally got up and pushed my car 3 times in the mud. I forgot about that till a security officer reminded me. So practical, the logistical difficulties, but also the media tended to focus on the Yugoslav tribunal, and with our tribunal they said this is yet another institution in Africa bound to fail. So we had a lot of negative publicity until we produced the jurisprudence. And then I was here in the International Criminal Court, and for the very first time in the appeals chamber ruled on the right of participation of victims in the process. So that was new to me too, a very good decision by the International Criminal Court. And then I had to leave and become the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and that was such a good mandate because one person had the power to question everybody on the human rights record and how to promote and protect human rights. And so, you know, I'm a lawyer and a judge. I read this mandate, said, all right, so I'm going to go full head under that mandate. I recall the Russian ambassador said once in the Human Rights Council, we created a monster. And he was referring not only to the Office of the High Commissioner, but the way the Human Rights Council was so active in dealing with human rights violations. I'm sure you follow the Human Rights Council. So remember, we have mechanisms today that we never had before. Since Nuremberg, we never had an international justice system. We had the 2 ad hoc tribunals, others followed, and now the permanent court. We have the Human Rights Council, which reviews the human rights record of every state. Every state voluntarily agrees to a scrutiny of their human rights record. And the contributions come from the High Commissioner's report, from NGOs, and NGOs have an opportunity to raise questions about their own country and other countries in the Human Rights Council. So this is very special. It doesn't happen in any other fora at the United Nations. So I say to you, you have so many tools and mechanisms now. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You make the maximum use of these mechanisms, even if we become monsters in the process. Thank you.